Hello, BookTube. I went out very early this morning to do a raft of errands, a whole bunch of things that have piled up all week. One thing after another where you look at it and you think, I don't have to do that today. I can wait. I can do that some other time. And eventually they piled up to critical mass, and the Boston area is looking like it's looking at a long amount of rain or sleet or snow going into the body of the weekend. So I figured last night, it looks like you get a little dry window on Thursday morning. If you're willing to leave the bean and go out early, you could probably get your errands done before any kind of weather closes in. The weather's not supposed to close in until late afternoon or evening. So I did that. I put on my big boy pants and I went out and did errands. Turns out it was a little bit lucky that I did, because the rain came earlier than expected and has stuck around. If I'd waited at all, I'd have had the miserable experience of tramping around in cold, wet socks. Instead, I got all my errands done first thing this morning. And one of those errands was, of course, a trip to the Brattle Bookshop, which is a used bookstore downtown Boston. It's great. It's got 3 floors full of books. And the reason why I mentioned the Brattle, for those of you who are new to the channel, maybe you've never heard of it before, the reason that I mentioned the Brattle in connection with the weather is because the Brattle also has an enormous outdoor sale lot. The floor space of an entire other building, next to the building, that's got thousands of books in it, thousands on an open-air carts. $1, $3, or $5, thousands of books. Not organized in any way except by price. So you literally have to pour through them to find out what's out there and what you might want and what you might have missed the last 2 times you looked. And I got a lot of my errands done, and I got to the Brattle just as the outdoor carts were being put out. I said hi and schmoozed with the staff, as I always do. I confess, when I was running my errands and looking at the sky, I was thinking maybe they won't bother. Maybe they just won't bother. It takes a bit of time and effort to put the carts out and to bring them back in. So if you think it's going to be pouring rain, and it's going to be pouring rain fairly soon, maybe you don't put them out at all. Maybe you just leave them inside and call it a no-cart day. But nope, the carts were out, and I got to browse in completely dry air, and it was wonderful. Just wonderful. And I got a gigantic pile of books that I wanted to show you. Now, I have said many, many times, you cannot coerce the random selection of the Brattle sale lot. If you go to the Brattle sale lot saying, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z, you not only won't find X, Y, and Z, you won't find anything else that you want either. You have to go in and flow with the carts. You have to take the Tao of the carts must be the only Tao. And remember, the only Tao is the one that does not, in fact, exist. How anybody understands the Tao Te Ching, I don't know. But because it's full of crapola like that, full of non-Catholic crapola like that. But I did have a yen in mind. I didn't make it in my own mind even. I didn't make it so formed as a want. But I did feel like I was more classically bent. Stuff with a lot more meat on its bones. Because in very little time, I'm not going to be reading new releases for 2022 anymore. But I am still going to be reading for a little while after that, in between the end of this year and whatever happens next year. And as I mentioned when we were doing the whole 500 book challenge, I don't have thousands of unread books lying around here. I could always reread what I have, absolutely I could. But something about knowing that I'm coming up on a time when I'm going to be doing a lot of reading that's not new releases, and also knowing, as dumb as it is, knowing that I'm coming up on a time when rain is coming. So the bean and I will be listening to rain pattering against the window panes, but we won't be going anywhere. It's not like we really go anywhere anyway. But I allowed those things to tell me that I should probably stock up on books. And I also wanted them to be fairly meaty. Not a whole lot of silly flights of fancy. And I didn't take it any further than that. If you take it any further than that into a plan or an intention, the Brattle lot will deny you. But I didn't, and it served me well. It served me really, really well. So I want to show you these. The first one is a paperback, and it was one of the only ones, only a couple of things on this entire pile that was just a complete shot in the dark. One of the nice things about the Brattle sale lot is that everything out there is so cheap that you can take a flyer on something for $1 or $3 or whatever and not worry about it. You can take a flyer on it. If it doesn't work out, you put it in the local free library, give it to somebody. No big deal. That's what I'm doing on this one. I was pushed in the direction of this one because it's a UK trade paperback, and for whatever design reason, whatever aesthetic reason, I love them. I love UK trade paperbacks. I found one of an author that I don't really know. His name is Robert Goddard. I'm assuming that he's much more a UK thing than a US thing. But this is a book of his called Sea Change. What I can tell from the dust jacket and the inside material of this book is that this guy has never written a book without giving it a cliche or an idiom for a title, which is really kind of sad. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't give up the creative fight right when the whole thing's over. Sea Change is fine for a working title, but it's a cliche. It signals that the book is lazy, and for all I know, the book is not. Well, this is look at this lovely thing. Just a lovely UK. I wish every book I had was a UK trade paperback. This is set in 1721. London is reeling from the effects of the greatest financial scandal of the age, the collapse of the South Sea bubble. William Spandrell, a penniless mapmaker, is offered the discharge of his debts by his principal creditor, a director of the South Sea Company, on one condition. He must secretly convey an important package to a friend of that director in Amsterdam. And he doesn't know what's in the package. So it sounds like a historical thriller. Don't know anything about this author, really don't know what to expect, so I took a chance, absolutely. Then this next one, I think I know what to expect, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. These things tend to please me. They are involved in the sport of birding, the pastime of birding. If you are a birder, or if you know one, you'll know already the kind of weird, obsessive world that I'm talking about here. I have gone out looking for birds myself. But as far as I'm concerned, owling is a different kind of thing from normal birding. That's the only kind that I ever did, where I went out intentionally to look for a bird. I don't think I would ever do it otherwise. I don't think I would ever do it for a finch or an oriole or whatever. But I love reading about the people who do, and this is a book that I've never encountered before. This is by George Levine, with illustrations by Marge Levine, and it is called Life Birds. I'm assuming because birders have a thing called a life list. I'm assuming that's what that is an allusion to. Birders have a thing called a life list where they keep meticulous records of what they have seen and hope for what they will see. There's a bit of Marge's artwork. And that's what this is. This is just, each chapter is just a different kind of bird. So it'll be stories of the field, probably some natural history mixed in there. I'm perfectly willing. It's not a big thing at all. Again, it was a total flyer. I knew nothing about it at all. I'm perfectly willing to give it a try. Most of the things, in fact, yes, everything else, on the list is more or less a known quantity. One of the things that I had in mind for today at the Brattle, I intentionally didn't make it a wish, but I have recently been, as the year ends and my duty to new releases wanes, I have been drifting into old friends, into rereading old friends, books that I know really well. And when it comes to books like that fit that description, I don't know what it says about me or what you'll think about it, but I don't think there's a book that fits that description better than the Bible. I'm not talking about things that I reread that I love or my favorites, but the number of times, the sheer amount of familiarity, I don't think there's anything that comes close. And I've recently been reading, I've got them right here. Okay, because I'm in the little book room. I've got them right here. I've recently been reading sort of side by side, not line by line, but read a long chunk and then in one and then read a long chunk in the other. The New English Bible and the New Jerusalem Bible. I've recently been sort of going at them side by side, and it has been reviving my interest in biblical reading. Very much so, very much so. And it's been making me realize that I don't, for instance, have the NIV. I don't have a print copy of the NIV. And the Brattle often doesn't have a wide selection of Bibles of various different editions. I don't think the used bookstores where a lot of people go to get their Bible. I won't say that I went to the Brattle hoping to see a Bible. Just thinking. That's all, just formlessly thinking that maybe I would see the NIV. I don't have a nice hardcover NIV. I didn't see the NIV, But out in the sale lot, I saw something even more remarkable, something that I've only read about, never actually read it. And that is a name that will be familiar on this channel. Reginald Knox is familiar on this channel. I've mentioned him a few times. He did a translation of the Bible that I found in his New Testament. How incredible. He did the Bible in 3 volumes. He broke the Old Testament up into 2 volumes, and he did 1 volume for the New Testament. This thing is seen better days, but it's covered, so it'll be nice and durable. And I have no idea. It's heavily annotated, but I have no idea what this translation is like at all. It'll be a remarkable thing. Right now, in the down deep in the weeds Bible reading and contemplating that I'm doing, it's all Old Testament. It's in fact all Book of Exodus. But New Testament is bound to follow. And now I'll have a New Testament that I didn't have before. How amazing. Then this next one is the kind of book that I get often. I've had this before. I got this from the publisher when this came out. Yes? Oh, well, it came out in 1994, but I'm pretty sure that I got it from the publisher. Well, even when I wasn't in reviewing, there was a period where a long period where I wasn't in reviewing. I still got a lot of books from publishers. I think that might be it. This is Edmund White, who a lot of you will know as a novelist. But he also wrote, and still writes, occasional prose all the time. Book reviews, book essays, introductions, afterwards, forwards, that sort of thing. And this book, The Burning Library, collects lots and lots of those. Do we have dates? 1969 to 1993, so that's great. That's fantastic. I've seen this on the shelf at the Brattle inside the shop plenty of times, but this was outside in the sale lot, and I have a whole wall of books like this that are, authors that either do it for a living, like I do, or that do other things for a living, like write novels, and do this as a side hustle, and never stop. Once you get this as a side hustle, you never stop doing it. Most people never stop doing it. Edmund White, I'm sure, will never stop writing about the literature of his day. Maybe not at a breakneck pace because his income no longer depends on it, but I'm sure that he will continue to do that. So it's always nice when somebody puts a book together. I mean, who knows what'll be in here? It'll be a whole bunch of authors and reviews of their latest works, reconsiderations of them on the 10th year anniversary of their death or whatever. It'll be a great way. I've read a lot of these pieces. I'm sure that a lot of them, I don't know if the acknowledgments will tell me, but I'm sure that I've read a lot of these in their original format, in where they originally were. Introduction, they're not going to tell me anything in the introduction, but you maybe have an acknowledgement section. Yeah, the New York Review of Books, Times Literary Supplement, Parish Review. I've read a lot of these in their original setting, but to have them all in one book is great. I just got a book by Will Self that does the same thing, just a new version. This is an older book, but I will gobble them both up. Absolutely. I go back to those books more often than any other kind of book. In fact, they need yet again a new home. I agonized for months and months to give them the home they currently have, and the home they currently have is completely overrun. So they need a new home, and I don't know what that home is going to be. There is no contiguous piece of shelf space that's big enough for as many of these books as I have, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop getting them. I grabbed this right away, absolutely. But that is another example of something I got from the Brattle today that is a known quantity. The Bible is a known quantity to me, even if I'm not familiar with Reginald Knox's translation. Books of literary criticism and book reviewing are known quantities to me, as is Edmund White. I've read everything the man has ever written. And known quantity definitely applies to these next two. I saw them. I realized that I don't have print copies of them, and I want print copies of them. I want to revisit them. I have vilified them or dismissed them for a long time, not since I originally encountered them. And that is the Richmond Lattimore translations of the Iliad and the Odyssey, which I found in, hardcovers. The tops here are all ragged, but they have covers on them. And that'll just be my Homer next summer. I read the Iliad every June and the Odyssey every August. And I always shy away from Richmond Lattimore because I've always thought that his translations were plodding, wooden. He did his best when he made these things. He did his best to hew as close to word-for-word translation of the Greek as possible. That isn't possible. But it ends him up with these flat 16-liners, the 16-pounders that just, to my mind, do nothing. They don't capture anything like the savage beauty of the poetry of the original, but they don't create any English poetry of their own either, so that if you pick up the Lattimore Odyssey, you'll think that Homer is a chore when he's not at all. But that's an old opinion. I'm perfectly willing to admit that. That's an old opinion. That opinion probably needs revising. I would have taken these, I ordinarily see these at the Brattle in really battered old school trade paperbacks with underlining and highlighting all over them. When I saw two, beautiful hardcovers that are mostly intact, the dust jackets and everything, I grabbed them. It's an added benefit, not a sales driver like it is for the rest of you freaks, but it was an added benefit that these things really have the musty old book smell. They really have that. So I'm perfectly willing to give them another try. I'll put them on the shelf. That's the thing about buying books. That's the connection with the 500 book challenge, except I don't take it to the weird, morbid extents that so many people I've learned do. I don't take it to those extents at all. I'm willing to get the Richmond Lattimore Iliad and Odyssey in December and store them away for a summer read. But I am going to read them in the summer. I'm not just buying books blindly that I have no idea when I'm ever going to read until I've got thousands of unread books on my shelves. Good Lord. No, I'm not doing that. And all of you who are doing that really need to take the 500 book challenge. I never thought I'd say that. Then these next two are a format more than they are their content. So probably, the format made me go ooh and grab them, but probably that means they will get a reread and then go on a sale pile or an unhaul pile. Because the books themselves, I don't think really do it for me. The format is these old Scribner classics with N.C. Wyeth illustrations. I have a whole bunch of those and I want more. I got, a couple of years ago on this channel, I hauled Jules Verne's Mysterious Island. Which is a fantasy novel, an adventure novel that I obviously want since it has a killer manatee in it. But the minute one of you saw it, you asked for it and I sent it away and I haven't found another copy. I want the Scribner N.C. Wyeth illustrated Michael Strogoff, for instance. And there are a few others. There are a few others. Journey to the Center of the Earth. I don't think I have. I'm pretty sure they do that. And also, when it comes to these Scribner N.C. Wyeth illustrations, the books I'm talking about. The one you'll probably know is the Treasure Island. But Wyeth's illustrations have become famous for these things. And they're extra on my mind because the other day I had a dream that book people have all the time. I had a dream that I was at the Brattle sale lot and saw a whole bunch of Scribner classics with N.C. Wyeth illustrations. But in the dream, there were a whole bunch that never existed. I knew in the dream, I knew that it was a dream at that point, and I wanted so bad to take them into the real world. There was a Scribner classic, N.C. Wyeth illustrated Moby Dick. There was one for the Jungle Books. There was one for Dracula and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. There might have been a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but there wasn't for most of the things that I saw. But I grabbed these two, even though I don't think the books themselves are really going to do it for me. One is Charles Kingsley's Westward Ho, with a Wyeth cover, and he'll only show you a Wyeth illustration. This is an Elizabethan adventure novel. There's a duel on the beach. An Elizabethan adventure novel based on an actual Elizabethan privateer, a boy who grows up to be that privateer, the fictionalized version of that privateer. It's a pretty mean-spirited book. I don't know. I haven't reread this in quite some time, but I remember I reread this. I found a Scribner edition probably 30 years ago, and I reread it then and thought, oh, there's exciting bits in there, definitely, and some very evocative bits of description, but some of the attitudes in here are so violently bigoted in one way or another, both against people, anybody who's not white, but also against the Catholic faith, against... given that was so many years ago, so many decades ago, I can only imagine what a reread of this will feel like now. Probably outright alienating. But I found it with this, it's in this series. I love the series. Probably that was a mistake. The Brattle is one of the only places that isn't tech where I will indulge in impulse buys because the books are so cheap. And the same thing with this next one. This is James Boyd. This is Drums. Seen better days, but it's amazing to get these things in any kind of shape. They're usually handed to kids. This particular thing is a kid's book. And there was a copy at the Brattle this morning of The Yearling, but it was in worse shape than either of these two. And this is an American Revolution War novel with spot illustrations and also full color illustrations by Wyeth Let's find one of those. And same thing. There's a young swain trying to woo his beloved. This is sort of the same thing as Westward Ho. Not exactly, because this is not a mean-spirited book, but it's very much the pure-hearted little boy taken in his prayers, piety of improving young books for children of its day that doesn't wear well anymore. It was always condescending to young people to pitch this kind of book to them in that register and have all the children in the book be the kind of little Lord Fauntleroy that parents, I guess, wanted their kids to be. It's just... It didn't really work for me any time that I've ever read this. This is often called one of the greatest American Revolution novels of them all. I don't think there is a great American Revolution novel. I don't know why that is. There's nothing of fictional treatments of the American Revolution that comes anywhere close to like half a dozen great Civil War works of fiction, for instance. But I don't think it is anymore, even if it was once. But this kind of saccharine, oh, I swear, Mummy, I will be good type of kids book, Robert Louis Stevenson put the end to these things by writing kids books that adults could love, by not writing down to children, at least in his fiction. In his verse he did. But I defy you to read Treasure Island or David Balfour, which were in part aimed specifically at children. I defy you to find any condescension in them. It just isn't there. Stevenson had too much respect for kids. He was almost a kid himself for most of his life. Whereas something like this, we will see. We will see. I'd much rather, for instance, have the jagged savagery of The Yearling over something like this. Over something like this, or, the dumber parts of Little Women, or the dumber volumes of Little House. We'll see. In both these cases, I don't think I'm going to keep the book. I got them because I imagined having a whole shelf of those Scribner editions. And that's not a good imagining. I'm not that kind of a book collector. I don't value N.C. Wyeth's paintings or these editions enough to have books in that series that I don't actually like. So probably I won't keep them, but I got them anyway. And this next one was kind of a booktube made me do it every once in a while. Obviously, if you watch book hauls on this platform, you know that plenty of us influence each other's buying, except for the few sods who aren't buying books these days. If you've got thousands of books that you haven't read on your shelves, then you shouldn't be buying books. But those of you who are out there buying books, you know the experience where you will be watching a booktube channel and some book will come up, either once or over and over again. And even if you had experience with the book and sort of know what you think of it, you'll still think, maybe I should give it another try. I mean, this booktuber keeps talking about it. And I've had that experience with a few channels, and one of those channels is the Brothers Gwynne. I don't know if you know their channel. I'll try to leave a link to their channel just in case. I think they just passed 5,000 subscribers. Good for them. They are two sons of the novelist John Gwynne, who's got a whole bunch of fantasy novels to his credit. And they're avid readers. They're kind of dorky. One much more so than the other. But they like a certain kind of thing. They're not cloistered readers. They are adventurous readers. But they like a certain kind of thing. The kind of thing their father writes. The kind of thing that Giles Christian writes. The kind of heavy thews, hard edges, spiked babies, hurled war axes. They like that kind of thing. And their channel ranges all over the place. They have an unfortunate predilection for both Cormac McCarthy and Sally Rooney. Cormac McCarthy's books, some of them, are full of random, mindless violence, and Sally Rooney's books make me wish that random, mindless violence would find its way to her door, or at least to her typing fingers. They have an unfortunate predilection for those two, but they read all kinds of things, and this author comes up on their channel quite a bit. Either mentions of him or mentions of his, I guess he has a podcast. I read this book when it first came out. When was this? 2021. So we would have gotten an advanced copy on this channel and then a finished copy on this channel. I'm not sure that this is an American edition. It feels too big. This is Powers and Thrones by Dan Jones, a history of the Middle Ages. I don't remember my finished copy of this being this big. This might be a UK hardcover of this. And there is Dan Jones, who was born when I got my second doctorate, I think. So, but nevertheless, he's got a thriving career as a historian, both on the page and on the screen. And has another reason why Dan Jones' name comes up in connection with the Brothers Gwynne is that he also has a new novel, The Essex Dogs, that they love. The two of them both love it. So, and they did a really, really dorky video about it. I'll leave a link to their channel. You can enjoy it at your own risk. But I read this thing. I will read it again. Absolutely. I will read it again as a kind of booktube made me do it. And see, I remember thinking at the time, I might have written about it. If I wrote about it, I'll try to remember to leave a link down below. But I remember thinking at the time, it's good, but it's very much a television screenplay. And, you know, there's a section of a history reading audience that will like that, and I'm not really in that section. We'll see. Maybe I'll have a more charitable view now that I know that it's winning hearts and minds all over England. And then the last thing here was a doozy. Keep in mind, if you're not pitying me enough as it is, keep in mind, I had to carry these things back here on my own. I don't have any muscular teenagers doing my toting and bailing anymore. I don't have any, what did they call it? A crew. They were my crew. I don't have that anymore. If I get hugely heavy things at the Brattle, I have to carry them myself. And this last thing, hugely heavy. I saw it out in the sale lot, and at first I thought, well, I read it when it came out, and I liked it. I don't really need it, though, do I? And then I thought two things. One, it's been a while since you read it. I bet you'll like it a lot more. And two, it's going to be awful lonely out here, and no one is going to look at this and want it. No one is. It's going to slowly make its way from $5 to $3 to $1 and then to the dumpster in the back. You could give it a loving home. Fill it with clippings. Give it a loving read with a pencil in hand for tons of annotations. You could give it what books all want. So I broke down. It wasn't that much of a struggle. The main consideration I had was the agony of getting it back here. Now that's done. This is a 2-volume box set hardcover of Edgar Johnson's biography of Sir Walter Scott, the author of Ivanhoe and Rob Roy, an author I dearly, dearly love. I have seen these individual volumes at yard sales and charity shops and whatnot, and I think once upon a time, at times, I have seen the box set, but not just sitting there neat as a pin. So I grabbed it. I absolutely grabbed it. And it will be high on the list of things that I read, or reread in this case, in a lot of these cases, in the next couple of weeks, for the rest of December. It'll be high on the list. It may be near the top of the list. I would say that I would read it, that I would dig into Volume 1 tonight, but I'm pretty sure that the Bible is going to have its way with me again tonight. I made that promise last night, and the Bible just completely took over. Just completely took over. Not just reading. It doesn't take that long to read the book of Exodus, but reading into it, studying it, to figure out, you know, ancient Hebrew significances and also Christian readings of the book of Exodus. I'll try to control myself because it'd be nice to go back into this volume. Scott's life was very, very interesting in terms of writers, in terms of writers' lives, including a gigantically dramatic twist of fate in what seemed like the final act, something out of a Thomas Hardy novel, only it really happened to him. So we've got a 2-volume life of Sir Walter Scott. We have Powers and Thrones by Dan Jones. It says Viking, but I think it's UK Viking, because I don't remember my copy looking or seeming like this at all. Then we have 2 Scribner classics, Drums and Westward Ho. We'll see what either one of them does for me. We have Richmond Lattimore's translation of Homer. We have The Burning Library by Edmund White. We have Reginald Knox's translation of the New Testament. Oh my God, we're going to lose each other. Lifebirds, a slim book on birding. And finally, Sea Change by Robert Goddard, who probably is known to a lot of you better than he's known to me. Probably a lot of you know, especially in the UK, you probably know his works a lot better than I do. Feel free to sing out. Anyway, that was a pre-stormy weather Brattle haul. We're going to have unsettled, rainy, snowy, sleety weather probably until Sunday morning here. So I figured it was only right that I go and stock up on books. And I got some that are going to end up in this room, right? The Burning Library is not going to end up in this room because the collections of book reviews and book essays in another room now. It's still going to be in the permanent collection. The Richmond Lattimore Homer will end up in this room, and so will probably the Reginald Knox Bible. It will depend. Maybe he'll drop the ball really bad in the New Testament. But in the meantime, we will wrap this up. That was my Brattle trip for today. But I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.